He was arrested by the United States Department of Justice. They sent a SWAT team to his home in the early hours of the morning in rural Pennsylvania. They detained his children. They used the full SWAT regalia, including semi-automatic weapons, rifles, and so forth, to take him into custody. He was taken into custody. He was charged like a criminal under the FACE Act. He was acquitted by the jury, which is truly remarkable. Thank you, Senator. Congratulations to the nominees. Thank you for being here. Mr. Woodward, let me start with you. You and I had a nice chat the other day. I appreciated the visit. When we were talking about the civil division, you referenced some tightening up that you believe needed to happen, and you brought up in that context the mifepristone case. So I just want to drill down on this for a second. 2 weeks ago or so, the Department of Justice entered and filed a motion in the mifepristone case in the Northern District of Texas. This is a Missouri case where the state of Missouri and some others are seeking to put back in place the safety protocols for the abortion drug that existed before Joe Biden removed them. The Department of Justice attorneys from the civil division filed a motion in that case seeking to have the case dismissed. Is it your understanding that that was a mistake? What's your view of this? I mean, you raised this case to me.
Senator, thank you for the question. As you can appreciate, it is long-standing policy of the Department of Justice not to comment on pending cases. Those briefs do speak for themselves. The reason I've raised that case with you is because we were having I thought, very helpful discussion about the fact that litigation should be holistic, and that as the Department of Justice continues to litigate on behalf of the president, there's an obligation, a duty even, for us to communicate with those with whom we're litigating against. We should be personal in our litigation. We should speak to those with whom we are litigating, and we should try to come to an agreement. We don't always have to resolve our disputes in court. Which
did not happen in this case. Is that the thrust of it?
That's correct, Senator.
In other words, the Department of Justice did not work with the state of Missouri. I have to tell you, though, I'm surprised and concerned by the department's decision on the merits in this case. And I've said as much to your soon-to-be boss, the Attorney General. I frankly don't understand it. And I'm sure this case isn't going away. I mean, the Department of Justice said that they did not think venue was appropriate. So let me just ask you, if the states refile in another venue, is the department going to oppose the states on the merits? I mean, is the department actually going to defend Joe Biden's pro-abortion regulations?
Senator, thank you for the question. I have had discussions with the Attorney General about this case in my role as counselor to her presently. Of course, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on those discussions. What I can tell you, Senator, is that if confirmed, we would look very specifically at every case to have been filed by the Biden Justice Department and ensure that those cases are appropriate. And then also ensure that we are taking the right track in those cases. And so I'm happy to talk with you and your colleagues about that case and any other case if confirmed.
As you, I hope, know, before President Biden, mifepristone, the abortion drug, had long had a series of safety protocols attached to it ever since it was first offered in the United States over 20 years ago, including requirements that a physician be the one to dispense the drug, that a physician screen for ectopic pregnancies, that a physician be present to provide emergency care if necessary. President Biden removed all of these, and now the drug is available. You don't have to be a physician to prescribe it. It can be sent through the mail. Telehealth providers from foreign countries are now providing this drug. And it doesn't matter as a consequence what any state or voters in any state decide. The voters of my state, for example, any limits on the drug imposed by voters of a state, consistent with the Dobbs decision, is automatically overridden by what Joe Biden's FDA decided to do. So this is a matter of extreme importance. And I just point out 70% of abortions now in the United States occur because of this drug, which can now be administered totally unsupervised. Let me just ask you, are you familiar with the Ethics and Public Policy Center's recent survey of mifepristone prescriptions? 865,000 mifepristone prescriptions over a 5-year period. Have you seen that study, Mr. Woodward?
Senator, I apologize, I have not seen that study.
Well, let me just bring you up to speed. What the study shows is that over 10% of women who are prescribed this drug, again, without physician help or aid, over 10% of these women experience a serious adverse health event. That means an infection, hemorrhaging, a life-threatening event, sepsis, that leads them to go to an emergency room. That is 22 times higher than what the FDA label currently admits is the risk of a serious adverse health event. This is the largest study of mifepristone done, I think, ever. 865,000 separate prescriptions were studied. So my point is this: the safety needs are extremely real. They are pressing. The rights of the states to protect their citizenry, I think, is extremely well-founded and well-developed, by the way. I mean, they are seeking the right relief in the right courts. And I just hope that the Department of Justice will do as you were saying a moment ago. I hope the Department of Justice will work with these states and will also vindicate the rights of voters to decide these issues and the rights of states to protect their citizens. I just can't imagine why the department would want to defend the abortion regulations of Joe Biden, who was the most rabidly pro-abortion president in American history. Very different than our current president, who has been the most pro-life president in American history.
Senator, I appreciate the question. As in the wake of Dobbs, I agree. The law is quite clear, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the President of the United States has said time and again he will follow the orders that come down from the Supreme Court.
Let me ask you here about one other religious liberty issue. Are you familiar with Mark Houck? Does that name ring a bell? Do you know about this case, Mr. Woodward?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm not familiar.
Well, that's all right. I think we've got a picture of Mark. Mark Houck is a pro-life demonstrator, peaceful demonstrator, a Pennsylvania man. Here he is with his family, his kids. They're at Mass there. He's a faithful Catholic. Mark Houck took one of his boys, pictured here, to an abortion center to go and walk on the streets, pray, and offer any counsel to any women who might voluntarily want to receive it, pray with them, etc. For this, he was arrested by the United States Department of Justice. They sent a SWAT team to his home in the early hours of the morning in rural Pennsylvania. They detained his children. They used the full SWAT regalia, including semi-automatic weapons, rifles, and so forth, to take him into custody. He was taken into custody. He was charged like a criminal under the FACE Act. He was acquitted by the jury, which is truly remarkable. I want to emphasize the state of Pennsylvania had the opportunity to charge Houck. They didn't do it because they didn't think, liberals in Pennsylvania didn't charge him because they knew there wasn't a case. The Biden DOJ charged him anyway, treated him like a terrorist, and a jury acquitted him, thank the Lord. Now, Mr. Houck is suing the Department of Justice for what they did under the Biden administration. So far, DOJ is opposing his suit. Doesn't this seem like something to you that should be settled? I mean, shouldn't this man have his name cleared? I want to emphasize the jury acquitted him, but shouldn't this man have his name cleared and have DOJ admit that what the Biden administration did to him was just dead wrong?
Senator, in my practice over the last 4 years, I saw firsthand how the Biden administration weaponized the Department of Justice, and there is no place for weaponization at the Department of Justice. I can assure you that we will look at every single case, to ensure that there is no weaponization at the Department of Justice. I look forward, if confirmed, to working with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, to Attorney General Pam Bondi. We will find those cases and we will resolve them.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think Mr. Houck deserves to have his name cleared. I think he deserves more than an apology for what Joe Biden did to him. He deserves recompense, he deserves restitution, and he deserves to get what you have gotten for your clients, which is an acknowledgement that what the government did to them is wrong. What the government did to him is wrong. It was a flat-out religious persecution, nothing but that. Joe Biden trying to send a signal to every religious believer and every pro-life believer in this country: don't you dare exercise your beliefs in public, or we might come with a SWAT team and haul you off to prison. It is a disgusting abuse of the First Amendment. Thank goodness a jury acquitted him. Now he deserves to be made whole, and I hope that you'll be part of that. I see nobody else here. Are we going to let it go? Well, they tell me that Senator Cruz is on his way, which means that I can just keep right on questioning. So what do you think, Mr. Woodward? I'm sure you're really enjoying this line of questioning. Let me ask you something different. Let me ask you about President Trump's executive order on Title IX in men and women's sports. Something you and I talked about is the need to see that the president's executive orders are enforced, that states are complying with them, that they're complying with federal law. Talk to us about the importance of his order protecting women, getting biological men out of women's sports. What does the department need to do there? What do you think is the priority? And tell us why this is so significant.
Thank you for the question, Senator. This is a deeply personal issue to me. I have a 2-year-old daughter who has 3 older brothers. She can hold her own, but it's it's a problem. It's an issue that has to be addressed. The president has taken this head on as an important issue in his administration. The executive orders speak for themselves. And although I can't comment on pending litigation that has been brought by the Department of Justice, we have seen that the Department of Justice is enforcing the president's executive orders. To quote the president, "We'll see you in court. Don't follow the president's executive order, we'll see you in court."
And you would send that message to universities that are currently failing to comply, that are violating Title IX. I mean, to be clear, Title IX protects women's sports. Title IX creates the right of women to play in sports that have integrity, where they are protected from danger, where they are given the same opportunities as male athletes. These universities that are putting biological men into women's sports and women's locker rooms are flagrantly violating Title IX. So your message to those universities is, if you don't amend your ways, you can expect to face off against the Justice Department in a court of law.
Senator, absolutely. I mean, it's a complicated issue. It's often attempted to make this out as an easy issue, but it is a complicated issue. There are sports for which it is advantageous, right? Men should not be competing in women's gymnastics, for example. And so this is not an issue that is easy to summarize or to make sound bites over. It is complicated, which is why it is important that the Department of Justice is paying careful attention to what the law is and applying the facts to the law.
Mr. Geiser, let me just ask you about nationwide injunctions for a moment, and about the proliferation of nationwide injunctions. We have seen them explode. They're first used in the 1960s, then they're almost never used. Of course, the nationwide injunctions, when you have one individual district court that purports to bind not just the parties before the court, but purports to impose its policy, its ruling, its order on the entire country, including parties not before the court at all, parties well outside the court's geographic jurisdiction or otherwise. Tell us about the importance of reining in the district courts to their proper constitutional role, which does not allow any individual district court to sit in the place of the Supreme Court and make policy for the nation. Tell us about the importance of this.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Hawley. And as you're aware, district courts are charged with adjudicating cases and controversies. And the Supreme Court of the United States has said that that task looks to the relief sought by the parties, and its equitable authority extends to the amount of relief necessary to redress those particular injuries. And as you are also aware, the Supreme Court is currently now considering some litigation involving that, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment on the specifics of that. But I agree with you that Article 3 imposes genuine limits and authorities for district courts, and it's in the text on the judicial power.
Setting aside the litigation currently before the Supreme Court, do you think that it is appropriate and maybe necessary for Congress to use our Article 1 authority to make clear that an individual district court does not have the constitutional authority to bind parties that are not before it or otherwise not within its jurisdiction? I mean, is that something that we Congress ought to consider doing?
Senator, I agree that Congress has an important role in setting the jurisdiction of the inferior courts that Congress creates. Those are the creature of this and the House's work. And so I think this body has an important role to play and could make a significant contribution to justice being done, as opposed to what I think millions of Americans are alarmed to see, which is the weaponization of the entire justice system to oppose the agenda that they enacted by voting for elected representatives like President Trump.
Well, I think we are looking at something that is very much a constitutional crisis, that is a growing crisis, and it is a crisis of district court judges that are way outside the bounds of the Constitution, that are seizing power that absolutely does not belong to them. And you're right, Article 1 does give us the authority to establish those courts in the first instance, to govern those courts. And in this case, I think it's time for this body to take action to ensure that those courts stay within their proper constitutional bounds.